did you know that according to the National Institute of Mental Health, over the past year in adults 18 or older, an estimated 19.1% of those adults experienced an anxiety disorder, with an estimation of 14.3% of those being men being diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. And I am one of those men healing from a complex PTSD. And today we're going to talk about breaking free from anxiety and trusting God's plan for your life. Welcome to another episode of Learning Manhood. My name is Eddie, and I come from Cultivated Minds Men Ministry, where we built this ministry on the foundation of merging theology and therapy to help men heal and step into the purpose that God has for them lives. Today, we want to talk about anxiety and its associated disorders, PTSD being one of them. The one that I am most familiar with are a lot of anxiety disorders that if you are unfamiliar, it's worth looking into to see if there's anything that you potentially need to be talking to your therapist about. But a little bit of my story, right? I've been in the military for roughly 18 years or so. And in that time, I've been exposed to a lot of things that have made me feel as if the world is a dangerous place. Gave me a lot of anxiety, a lot of paranoia. And a lot of people feel this way, on a regular basis, not being in the military, just from watching the news, right? You see all the things that are going on in the news every day. You're seeing all these things happening around the world every day. You can start to build up a little bit of anxiety or a little bit of paranoia about your daily life. Now, I was exposed to it on kind of a global scale, and I noticed it a few years back when I started to hyperfixate on protecting myself and my family at all times. Now, I imagine there are most of you that are like, that's what you're supposed to do. Your dad, your husband, you're supposed to be keeping an eye out to watch after your family at all times. But it got to the point where I did not want my family to leave the house because that was the only place I felt the safest, right? Like I would take my kids, begrudgingly take them to like football practice, and the whole time that they're, having a good time, I am busy doing perimeter sweeps and watching the family, watching the all the people out there, seeing if there's anybody that's looking suspicious, looking like anybody's going to do anything crazy. It's kind of like how the Secret Service operates. If you've ever seen the Secret Service, right, they don't stare at the president, right? They're always eyes out, and the president's behind them for the most part. You have the one or two that are right up on the president, but usually everybody's watching everything else other than the president, right? And so the president could be delivering a speech, can be shaking hands and kissing babies, whatever. The Secret Service are not actually watching him. They're watching everything else. And so that is how I was reacting in my daily life with my family. I was watching everything else to the point where I was missing everything going on with my family. Everything that was going on. Like I said, I was taking my son to football games, and I was missing stuff that he was doing. Like the crowd would start cheering, and then I'd be like, "Danger!" And I'm like, "Oh no, he ran. He got a first down. Oh yeah!" And now I'm screaming, all late, and everybody's looking at me like I'm crazy. But I was always missing what was happening in my family. And today I want to talk to you kind of about how my journey went from, not wanting to leave my house to having, panic attacks all the time to, being able to become a functioning member of society again, because there was a lot of times where I was not a functioning member of society, where I essentially was just doing my best to put on a brave face and go out into the world and, hope that if something goes down that I was prepared at all times. I like to think that I was prepared at all times, but I'm thank God that nothing ever happened, because I probably would have gone too far instead of just doing what needed to get done to take care of my family. But what is anxiety? Anxiety is defined as a feeling or worry, nervousness, or unease, typically about an imminent event or something with an uncertain outcome. For some of us that experience anxiety, it's fleeting, right? Some of us will go to the checkout line and be like, "Ooh, man, did that bill hit yet? Like, if I swipe my card, is it going to go through? Like, am I going to get embarrassed?" Like, that's anxiety, worry, or nervousness, unease, typically around an imminent event. or something with an uncertain outcome, or like we all face anxiety waiting for things, right? Um, when we're waiting for results to come back for, a test that we took, or a promotion that we're trying to get, right? You have a little bit of anxiety with that. And I have to acknowledge that not everyone is going to go and deal with the extremes of an actual anxiety disorder, kind of like the things that I'm talking about now. But we do need to talk about how anxiety impacts us as a whole, even if it's not as extreme as, say, PTSD or bipolarism or things like that. So when we have anxiety, we are essentially worrying about what we cannot control. And that is the thing that really kind of resonated with me as I started to study and really understand what my therapist was saying, and then what my pastor was saying, and then what I was learning becoming a trauma coach, and what I was learning as a theologian, right? Starting to put these worlds together to really understand what is it that I'm after. And that anxiety was me really after control. And there's one thing that God asked us to do on a consistent basis, and it's surrender. And that is a scary, 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 scary thought for someone like me that wants to control a lot of the things around me, wants to control, the people coming in and out, wants to control knowing where things were coming from and things were going, if we were in a potential for danger, if I'm the most dangerous thing in the room, like I'm trying to find out all these things. I'm trying to control my space at all times. So surrendering to God was a very difficult task for me to achieve on my journey for healing through this anxiety and this PTSD. And I'm starting to see that online in the world, my generation of men, and my generation, not just my generation of men, my generation writ large is really trying to advance the conversation about mental health, right? And that's just because with each generation, we get smarter and smarter and smarter, right? We have names to put to the things that our grandparents were going through that they just drank themselves away dealing with, right? And we are becoming not only becoming more aware of mental health, we're celebrating kind of the compartmentalization that dads and men have. And I don't necessarily like that, because I'm seeing that, dad's superpower is like being excited and hanging out with the family and doing all these things, when he really feels very melancholy and very down and overwhelmed and just trying to figure it out. Like he's got all these things going on in his mind, but on the outside, he's presenting that, yeah, everything is awesome, right? You can tell, look, if you've not seen that movie, you can tell I got kids, but we're not going to go there. So what that really is compartmentalizing. And the example I like to use when we talk about what compartmentalizing is, because men do it so well. And even in my life, I found that as I started going to therapy, that I compartmentalized so well that I didn't even realize I was doing it. That things happened and they were put away and not dealt with. And before I even realized that I should have been dealing with it. Let me explain. Imagine you've got a shoebox and you're walking around with this shoebox everywhere. And it's just a shoebox for your emotions. As emotions come in, you're like, I don't have time for this. Put it in the shoebox, keep my mask on, and just be like, I'm good to go. So you keep putting things in this shoebox throughout your day, the things that keep happening, you put it in your shoebox. And then at the end of the day, you go home, you stick that shoebox up in the closet, bloop, close the closet door. Those emotions never get dealt with. Until what ends up happening is you keep putting things in this shoebox and you keep putting them in the closet. And then one day, what ends up happening is you go to close the closet door and you can't, it's too full, or you just jam it closed. And then one day something happened. There's something little, like, especially for you dads in the middle of the night, stepping on a Lego and you lose it. Like we lose it. All those emotions come bursting out of that closet on us. And now that we are feeling all these things at once, how does it that men generally present when they have a bunch of emotions they're dealing with at once? They get angry. We get mad. we blow up on a thing, and it's always just something small, and all of a sudden you're screaming at the whole household about how you're the only one that ever cleans up these daggone Legos, and you don't know why did you spend these money on these Legos, because they're all over the floor. You guys are crazy. I'm so mad at this. Like, why are y'all eating all my dang fruits and vegetables? Like, y'all ain't supposed to be in here eating all my food. Like, you didn't pay for. Like, that's the kind of nonsense that we get into when we don't deal with our emotions, right? And we just get flooded with them all the time. We do something stupid. We are not built to be anxious people. We are not built to worry. And as per usual, I got some verses together that really helped me deal with my anxiety and show me to trust in God, and show me that God got me. And I know I've been talking a lot about my PTSD and a lot of the things that I've been going through. I just want to let you guys know that I'm, in the healing process. I have been leaning on God very, very heavily, and really understanding what my therapy is going on, and understanding what my theology is doing to really bolster my mental health. And so I am doing much better. I know I say this a lot as I'm going to talk through this episode. I'm going to talk about things that I have been going through, but my day to day now, I'm doing much, much better. I feel your concern already, but you don't have to walk up to me on the street and be like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" Yes, I'm doing I'm doing all right, which is why I'm okay to talk about it. All right. So biblical foundations for overcoming anxiety. Now I'm gonna keep it funky with you, right? On this journey to begin healing myself with the Word of God in therapy, this is one of the first verses I came across where I thought, for sure, I am going to hate this verse forever. When I read this verse for the first time, my mental state was just like, this is the worst thing that you could possibly tell me right now. But I was going at it from my own lens, right? So I'm trying to give you an opportunity to hear this verse in this context, and hopefully that it clicks for you a little bit faster than it clicks for me. So if you're down bad right now and you're just like, I cannot believe you just read this verse, how am I supposed to? I feel you. I feel you. Just bear with me, and I promise you we're going to make it make sense. Because the verse is Philippians 4:6-7. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, be prayerful and pray with thanksgiving and present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your mind in Christ Jesus. Now, this verse is essentially about prayer, right? And I hated it. How are you going to tell me, like, I live in the real world, right? I live in the real world that has active shooters, bomb vests, grenade straps to homemade, drones, COVID. Like, I live in the real world. How can I not be anxious about anything? How are you going to tell me not to be anxious when I'm driving by and I see gas prices, right? I see how much it costs me to get a gallon of milk and a loaf of bread, to feed these kids. Like, how are you going to tell me not to be anxious about anything when I have so much I can be anxious about? So I read that first bit, do not be anxious about anything, and it was like hard stop. Like, nope, this is stupid. This is a terrible way to help somebody deal with anxiety, but I was approaching it all wrong. I was looking at it like I was supposed to just stop being anxious and just pray, but really it's about praying about the things that you're anxious about, giving them to God, and really trying to understand and get a place of peace through it. Like, I get anxious about, Lord, did you see that? For those of you that don't know, I live in California and gas prices are stupid, right? I miss Texas. Gas prices are ridiculous. Like, Lord, did you see how the gas done went up? And you saw how my paycheck looked, and you saw how my bills look, right? And you see I got to drive to go do the things to take care of this family, right? You see all these things because these ands don't look like they meeting, Lord, right? And so that changed the game for me. Just taking all my anxieties to God. Taking all my anxieties to God and being like, okay, you want them, you can have them. We're going to pray about everything. So if I'm in the grocery store and this guy looks weird and he looks like he's about to go into the bathroom and assemble an AR-15 and start taking people out because he's just having a bad day and his wife done slept with the milkman, I am going to pray about it. And you might think that these thoughts are crazy and be like, why are you think these are the things that this is what I lived with for a very, very long time. But when I decided to give these things to God and really feel a sense of peace about those anxieties, things were slowly but surely getting better. But it took me a while to really just be like, okay, God, this thing I am anxious about, what you gonna do about it, right? And really just sit with that and be like, I'm trying to trust God on this. I'm trying to watch this game and trust that God is taking care of me and my family out of this football game, right? It took me a long time to be able to really sit in that space, but I promise you, it has been one of the most helpful aspects of me being able to get through some of my anxiety. My next verse is one that I also couldn't stand. And in the moment, I'm realizing that I've like all three of the verses that I'm going to share that I really couldn't stand in the beginning because I was looking at them all wrong. So bear with me. Like this next verse is Matthew 6:34. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. I hated this verse because rent's due tomorrow. Like I ain't got no food left for tomorrow. Like I don't know. Like for those of you that are having a different, type of anxiety, I don't even know if I'm going to be married tomorrow. I've got a lot to worry about because there is a lot coming down the pipe, right? Life is trying to suplex me. And the verse really is about how can you tell me not to worry about tomorrow when I have something to struggle with today? And the verse was a light bulb moment for me that I still have to actively focus on. Like I tend to lean very far into the future, which means I'm planning my next move, planning my family's next move long before we get there. And so today everybody's sitting down and having dinner, but I'm thinking about what we're doing in the next 3 months, which means that I'm not here today. And so Lord, give us this day our daily bread, right? This whole verse is about staying in the moment. Like, yes, things are happening. Your world is going to change. Things are going on. However, I need you to be present today. Bring me what is your problem today. We will worry about tomorrow when tomorrow comes, but bring me what it is that you have today so that way you can be a present father, husband, co-worker, brother, sister, like whatever it is that you need to do. Like you need to be able to be present in that time frame. Now, this last verse was one. Again, I hated it. I'm just going to go ahead and read it. It's Psalms 55:22. Cast your cares on the Lord and he will sustain you. He will never let his righteous be shaken. Let's explore this concept a little bit. If we go back to our shoebox analogy, right? Let's say if we take our shoebox every day and at the end of the day, we go and we take our shoebox instead of to our closet, we take it to Jesus. At the end of our day, when we're praying before we go to bed or we're just praying or whenever we have time, well, we take that shoebox and say, okay, Lord, these are the things in my shoebox that I don't want to deal with. Here are some emotions that came up. Here are some thoughts that came up. Here are some problems that came up that I put into the shoebox so that way I didn't have to deal with it. I need you to take this. That is going to force us to have to really analyze some of these emotions and really kind of process through some of these emotions before we can just be like, all right, here you go, leaving it at your feet. I'm not coming back with this box, right? And so that's what that verse is really talking about. Cast your cares on the Lord and he will sustain you. I have found that the more I pray about a thing and say, hey, this is the thing that I was feeling today. Here is this shoebox. I can't deal with this, so I need you to figure this out. I need you to help me figure this out. I need you to either give me the strength, the wisdom, or the discernment to figure this out because I clearly can't do it. So you got this, and either you got this or I'm just going to drown. Like, make your pick, right? Come on. You want me to be successful? You want me to drown? And so these are the things that we got to practice leaving at God's feet, right? And so before we close it out, I really want to have some practical steps to break free from anxiety. I've got two things that I want to kind of touch on. One of them we've already kind of talked about, really leaning into your word. But the other one I want to talk to you about something that's called the 3-3-3 rule that I got from my therapist. And it allows you to pause and reset in the moment. And so the first step of the 3-3-3 rule, like when you're feeling anxious and you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed, what you do is you stop and you be still, right? If you're driving or something, don't just hit the brakes. Look, be safe, right? We need you around, right? So the first step is to stop moving and be still. And the second step is to focus for a moment and out loud name 3 things that you see. Name 3 things that you see. And I always try to pick something that I generally am not paying attention to, something that is in my line of sight, but it wasn't something that I recognized it was there, but it wasn't something I paid attention to. Like, oh, there's a book I haven't finished reading over there on my couch. There is a box of paper that I don't know when someone delivered this to my garage, but apparently it's for me. And my squishy lemon that is sitting over there that I use when I get anxious, right? These are 3 things that I have noticed about my space. The next step is focus on 3 things that you can hear. And again, I try to find more obscure things. Like if I'm sitting in the car, I don't want to say, oh, I'm hearing the music. And like, no, I hear the sound of my engine turning over. I hear the sound of my tires crunching on the pavement. I hear the sound of the wind going past the side of the car. And then the third step is to focus on 3 things that you feel. Again, when I'm sitting down, I like to try to make sure that it's very, very close to me. So it's like, man, I feel the texture of this shirt on my skin. I feel what the insoles of my shoes. I feel the lack of lumbar support in my chair right now, right? Taking the time to focus on those 3 things gives you an opportunity to have a mental pause, to kind of come back into the moment, into the present where you are safe and sustained, and you begin to pay attention to what your body is feeling. We really need to take time to pay attention to how our bodies react when we're going through anxieties, because we start to carry all that in our chests and in our shoulders. Like, that's why most of the time when you're trying to breathe a second, you just like, you kind of stretch like that. It's because you carry all that tension up there from your anxieties. So taking that moment to 3-3-3 gives you a chance to reset and sit in the moment and be like, okay, what is it that I can accomplish right now in this moment? Everything else I've got to give to God and worry about it tomorrow. The next step is an anchor verse. Now, I've read you a couple of the verses that have really kind of helped me with anxiety, but I want to tell you that this verse right here is the verse that started this whole mindset of mine of theology and therapy. And to be honest, like I thought I made it up. I genuinely thought I had just come up with this brilliant thing, found out other people were already doing it, which is a great thing. But this is how, like, this was the thing that made me really understand that God was here for me, because this verse felt like it was written exactly for me, because it was talking about all the things that I was going through. So as you are going through your anxieties and things like that, don't make it complicated. You don't have to open the Bible and read a word from cover to cover to find an anchor verse for you. Just Google verses about anxiety, verses about whatever problem that you're dealing with, and find a verse that resonates with you, and then stick with that verse, because that verse could potentially be the thing that helps you stay rooted in your word as you continue to grow forward. So I'm going to read you mine. It is Psalms 4:8, and it reads this: He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrows that fly by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. You will only observe with your eyes and see the punishment of the wicked. Now, for someone that was having nightmares every day, for someone that was scared of everything, being a potential bomb threat or a potential shooter or a potential mass casualty event going on at all times, this was the verse that made me feel like, okay, God not only got me, that he is calling me to take refuge in his word. And so that really resonated with me in a way that I just really started to begin to click the thought process that there is something to the word of God that also is resonating with what I'm learning in therapy. So I got 2 last quick quick little tips for you guys to help you manage anxiety before we go is I talk about this in a lot of episodes, and I want to keep talking about it because I think it's important. You need to seek community. Surround yourself with supportive, faith-filled people and share your struggles with your trusted friends and family members. And then my next tip is take care of your body, right? You've got to ensure that you're getting enough sleep, eating well, staying active to maintain a good physical health and a good mental health. You cannot be vegging out every day and think that you're just going to be okay. A lot of the anxieties this generation is feeling is because we've gotten too comfortable with not doing anything. For a long time, we was outside all day, right? We was out the house. And so now we've gotten to a place where I spend most of my day in front of a computer. And so I'm not as physically, I have to make myself be as physically active as I want to be. And physical health is just as important as your mental health. Now, I still check corners and doors. I do a sweep of my surroundings before entering and remaining in crowded spaces. I know where every exit is when I move outside, in the outside world, and depending on what the situation is, like I still have a little bit of that sense of I need to be vigilant. However, I've gotten to a point where I feel like I can rely on God to prick me, to be like, hey, you have been trained to do this, and this is the thing that looks weird. And so I'm trusting God that I don't have to be vigilant at all times, that he's got me and he's covering me. And so my anxiety does not keep me from being able to live in the world that I live in. It does not keep me from being the father that I need to be. So if you're struggling with that, there is a way to get better. You can get better. If you are not seeing a therapist, if you're not talking to a pastor, if you're not talking to or reading your word or anything like that, I recommend you do these things. I don't know why we got into this stigma that therapy and pastoral counseling is bad for you. It's not. It's wonderful. Everyone should do it. But make sure you find the therapist that is right for you. Just because they are the first person you came across does not mean that they're right for you. So go out there, gentlemen. Look for the avenues that you need for healing. If you need someone to talk to, as always, I'm here. Reach out. You can find me on Instagram at Cultivated Minds Men. You can find me on YouTube at the Learning Manhood podcast. You can leave a comment, like, and subscribe there. If this message at all resonated with you, or you know somebody that might be dealing with a little bit more anxiety, this message just isn't just for men. I talk to men specifically because that is just my mission. However, we all deal with these things, and it is important for us as men to recognize these things so that way we can help others, especially when it comes to our spouses and loved ones. So if this message resonated with you at all, share it with somebody, leave a comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Otherwise, I will see you in the next one. God bless and be safe.